This is LSAT Prep Test 154, Section 3, Passage 2. This is a comparative or dual passage set. The topic is whether falsehood belongs in writing. This is a medium difficulty question. Not because the ideas are necessarily hard, but because the two passages look like they agree more than they actually do. Both authors here defend inaccuracy. That is your surface level read, but they are defending totally different kinds of inaccuracy in totally different genres with totally different levels of confidence. And if you miss those gaps, you're going to treat the passages as being interchangeable, and the questions definitely won't let you get away with that. Now, passage A is about historical fiction. The author gets right to it. You can't write good historical narratives without making things up, because period accurate dialogue would be unreadable. You've got to invent conversations, you've got to fill gaps the record doesn't cover, and the author is not apologizing for any of this. They're stating it like it's obvious. Then comes the move that matters the most in passage A. The author separates lies from mistakes. A lie is intentional and purposeful. A mistake is accidental and unforgivable. And so the question is not whether a detail is accurate. The question is whether the inaccuracy is doing something useful. Accurate equals good is way too simple, and that's the whole point. Then the second half of passage A adds a limit, then immediately brushes past it. They say, sure, some lies go too far, but then the author spends only one sentence on that and pivots straight to Shakespeare. Shakespeare, of course, distorted facts on purpose. The result was drama that people still remember. You want to read that section fast because the Shakespeare example is just proof of the argument, not actually a new idea. Now, the tone of the passage here is steady, confident, straightforward, no second guessing. File that away. Passage B is an autobiographer, and the tone shifts immediately. The author is astonished at their own unreliable memory. They know a memory is wrong. They can hold both versions in their head at once. But the false version is more vivid, it's more emotionally real. And that opening section is doing something sneaky. It's building sympathy before the argument even starts. So you're already kind of nodding along with them before the author asks you to even accept anything. But then the argument lands. If the actual events don't capture the emotional experience, the writer has to choose. And if a false memory feels more true than the real one, maybe it carries its own kind of truth. The author calls it a subjective truth, an emotional truth. You want to slow down there. That phrase is the entire philosophical foundation for everything that follows. Now, here's where passage B gets really interesting. The author says lying is basically unavoidable in autobiography. And then it goes further. Leaving out emotionally powerful false memories might actually be more misleading than including them. And that is a pretty bold claim, and the author knows it. Because right after making that case, the author then turns on themselves. They say their argument has grown strained and their tone shrill. They are unhappy with where their own logic has taken them. Now, this is the moment that separates strong students from everybody else. Most people read that admission and think the author is backing down, but they're not. They still hold the position, they just don't love holding it. In other words, there is a difference between changing your mind and being uncomfortable with your conclusion. Now, the very end of passage B draws a line between autobiography and journalism. The trust a reader brings to an autobiography is different. It's not about factual accuracy. Autobiography sits on what the author calls the middle ground between fact and fiction. Different writers will land in different spots on that ground. Now, here's the key move. Both passages say falsehood can be valid, but passage A treats it as a craft decision. The writer chooses to distort facts to improve the story. It's deliberate. It's a tool. Passage B treats it as something the writer is stuck with. Memory is unreliable. The distortion happens whether you want it to or not. One author's in the driver's seat, the other one is a passenger. And the confidence gap matters just as much. Passage A never flinches, passage B flinches repeatedly. And that difference in tone is absolutely going to show up in at least one question. Now, the main trap is flattening these two passages into the same position. A student who walks into the questions thinking both authors are fine with lying is going to get burned. The test will ask how they differ. It's going to ask what one author would say about the other's situation. And if you can't separate the tool from the condition, you're going to pick answers that sound close but miss the distinction. Now, you want to watch for questions that put the two authors in conversation. Passage A's author would probably tell passage B's author to stop agonizing and just own the distortion. Use it on purpose. Passage B's author would probably say, that's fine when you're writing fiction, but autobiography doesn't give you that luxury. You don't get to choose which memories feel real. Also, keep an eye on that word trust at the end of passage B. The author distinguishes between the trust you bring to autobiography and the trust you bring to a newspaper article. And that distinction is a natural spot for a question. Now, before you hit the questions, make sure you know three things. First, what is the difference between a lie and a mistake in passage A, and why does the author care about that distinction? Second, why does the passage B author admit their own argument feels strained, and does that admission change their position? And third, if both authors were in the same room, what would they actually disagree about?